This is all about SCORE Cleveland. Basically, I want to tell you a little bit about SCORE. Excuse me. SCORE has the largest network in the nation, over 10,000 people, providing free volunteer services as small business mentors. No matter what stage your business is in, at SCORE, we have a mentor for you. And you can easily request a mentor to help you start, grow, or transition your business today. SCORE's mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. We aim to give every person the support they need to thrive as a small business owner. Small business drives our national economy through business formation, job creation, and wealth building. Small businesses are critical to vibrant communities in our society. All SCORE volunteers give freely of their time, energy, and knowledge. You will never be charged a fee for working with a SCORE mentor. We work with anyone who walks in the door, and we make no distinction whatsoever. Our mission is to empower all entrepreneurs to succeed. Basically, in 2022, the last year for which we have complete data, we helped start 501 businesses, over 800 jobs were created, and a total of 7,500 interactions with clients through mentoring took place. We service 7 counties in Northeast Ohio, including Cuyahoga, Lake, Lorain, Geauga, Ashtabula, Huron, and Erie. Because our work is supported by the U.S. Small Business Administration and a few generous sponsors, and thanks to our network of 10,000 volunteers, as I mentioned, we deliver all of our services at no charge. This is our website, SCORE Cleveland, and I'm going to show you in a minute, get your phones ready, QR codes that will allow you to do 2 things. The first one on the left will allow you to bookmark the homepage for the SCORE website. And by the way, if you want to forget the QR code, just want to find us, make sure you say SCORE Cleveland Mentor, those 3 words. If you just say SCORE Cleveland, you'll get one of the great sports teams we have in our city, but it won't be SCORE, this SCORE. The other one on the right is a QR code allowing you to request a SCORE mentor. By the way, for those of you who are registered, you will receive a link to a recording of this session. And so if for any reason you mislay or can't find the QR code, you can just go to the recording and pick it off. This will also be on YouTube. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to turn the session over to Dina Davis, who will introduce herself further.
All right, give me a quick second, turn over. Okay, can you see the slide? Oh, sharing stopped. Okay, let's try this again.
You were sharing momentarily, but there you go.
All right, perfect. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Dina Davis. I am one of the SCORE mentors. I've been now a little over 3 years, so it's been an awesome journey and being able to partner with SCORE and all of you ambitious entrepreneurs. Myself, I am also an ambitious entrepreneur, so we share a lot of that spirit. Just a little bit about my background. I've been in human resources now for, I just say 20 plus years now. I have been basically doing this my entire professional career. And, throughout that time, there's been a lot of really interesting evolution in terms of HR, how HR has functioned, the different ways we handle the different parts of the business that we are most involved with. And ultimately, this translates whether you're working in a company or you have your own company. So there's a lot of beauty in HR that I hope to share with you here today. But just this is just letting you know that I've been around for a while. So if you have some questions, I won't be able to see the chat necessarily throughout the presentation, but if they do come up, feel free to ask them, and we'll make sure we get to them at various points in the presentation. All right. So if you think about yourself as a business owner, and again, I alluded to this because I have some of these same worries myself, is, what keeps you up at night? When we're talking today just about human resources, which is one function of your business, think about all of the things that you have to think about for your business. So, my marketing, my sales, do I have enough funding, capital? Do I have the right people? Can I find the right people? What are my customers saying and doing about with my product? So there's a ton of things that is on your shoulders as a business owner. And one of the things that I like to share with this example is it's the whole type of teaching that SCORE does for us on a regular basis, where they talk to you about being being on your business and not in your business. And this is a great example of being in your business, because you as one person are tackling on the world. And as talented as we all are, there are certain areas of the business that we start to think about, where do we need additional help or expertise, especially as you start to grow, because what you do as a small business, the way that you need to scale that in order to maintain those internal functions is very different depending on what you're looking at internally. So whether it's HR, it's marketing, it's sales, it's accounting, it's again, your maybe it's your operations or your customer service, excuse me, all of these different elements will need to scale over time, and you'll likely need to pull in different experts at different times throughout your business. Okay. So when we talk about human resources, it's interesting when I say I work in human resources to judge the response. And I say that lovingly, because I get a variety of responses. But in terms of a business function, and this is the part that I think is really important to help set the foundation, human resources, it is not a person, it is a function of your business. So, as a new business owner, that's the first thing that I think helps bring context to helping you understand the vast number of responsibilities that you have as it relates to human resources. Just know that it's a function of your business. And I say that intentionally because on the last slide I talked about marketing and sales and all these other departments. We think very naturally like, oh yeah, that's marketing, or that's a department. I need to build that out and capitalize resources, or make sure I have expertise for this particular function. That's pretty much known in some areas, but for HR, a lot of times we put that responsibility of knowing everything on one person, and that's not always the case. So when you're thinking about your HR department, again, that's why I say it's a function, because there are specialties within HR. We have things like recruiting, we have benefits, we have sometimes payroll falls in HR. We also have talent and leadership development. So there's all these different elements of the employee life cycle that HR manages for your organization. Again, regardless of how big or small it is, doesn't matter if you have one person or 1 million people. Again, it may look very different in how we manage these things, but what you have to do as an employer is the same. So, again, think of this as you're starting to go down your journey of your organization, and as it continues to grow, think about this and say to yourself, how does my HR function need to grow in order to support my business? And then that will help you best determine who you need to help you to do that. So there are people like myself that are generalists that do a little bit of everything. And then there are people that are specialists within HR that specialize on certain parts of the employee life cycle. And that employee life cycle is something we use in human resources because it really shows you that HR touches your employee at every point of their career with your organization, from the time they are thinking about applying or working with you to the time that that person may leave. So everything in, around, and in between, HR has some sort of role or participates in helping to manage for your organization. So it really is, again, a function of your organization that helps to manage aspects of an employee's career as it relates to the life cycle. And then there are other business aspects that we manage as well. Okay, so thinking about your HR function, this is a really great slide. I use this quite a bit actually, because in human resources, it's broken out into different types of human resources. So, like I said here before, the person or the people that you have helping to manage your HR function can be generalist or specialist in having certain expertise. But over here, this is getting a little bit deeper into that because within HR, a lot of times, if you haven't worked with HR as a leader or a business owner, your view of HR is very administrative. And while that is still part of HR, the way we get that done and who gets that done is very different than it has been in the past. So I like this slide to give you some context in terms of your HR function and how it works. So how HR works in general is we have, I call them these pyramid layers. So at the very bottom, you have HR admin and compliance. That's what most of us know about HR. And these are the must-haves. These are the things that we do to make sure that we're compliant, which is, of course, compliant with laws and regulations. We create policies, practices, record keeping, all of those things that most of us know as HR. That's really at the bottom of the pyramid. And I put it there because it is foundational to HR and it still has a certain amount of volume to it depending on your business. And again, the more hiring you do, the more employees you have, these types of things, and the amount of compliance and administration you have typically grows. So if you get up to that next level, you have HR operations. And so HR operations is exactly what I just stated, is we've grown to a point where we have to administer all of these things, these benefits and payrolls and all of these services and we'll call them products and services, right? These benefits, products, and services that we have, because we have human resources systems, we have databases, we have systems that integrate. So it's very technical, and the HR operations side of it is really the management of those systems and processes. Because if you have paid attention in HR in any respect in the last, I'll say 20 years since I've been there, we really, for most organizations, we don't really touch paper. Pretty much everything has been automated now to the point where we can have digital forms filled out, or you can go online and submit certain things as the employer. So it's very automated, and the more your business grows and the number of employees you add, of course, that adds complexity, and that requires you to have HR operations, which really streamlines and makes sure you have the right systems and processes. And then at the top of the pyramid, that's your HR strategy. These are, I call them the underutilized HR, because a lot of times people don't know that these are valuable contributions that HR can have for your business. So HR strategy is where we're looking at things like culture, our operation, our talent, our people, anything that has to do with the organization and setting us up for success, or helping the organization move in the direction that it's attempting to move. And so, like a quick example, I have a client, they are looking to double their size in 3 years. So everything I'm setting up for them, whether it be recruiting or organizational structures or job design or these different things for them, is all giving them that runway to be able to grow into the organization so that HR does not become the bottleneck. So this is great because they're bringing me in early. I can help advise them on that early. Whereas if they would have brought me in at the last minute, these things are harder to implement. So that strategy piece, again, is really direction setting. And my heart of hearts, my HRBP, which is called the HR business partner, that's where we really look to align and leverage those people's strategies to advance things moving forward. So a quick example, I have like a leadership group. There's new production goals that are being put out, and there's very strict KPIs, and goals that they have set for the organization, and it's very aggressive. So we're going to be putting the leadership team through training to help them to make sure that they can meet these objectives. So that's again where we would be helping designing the training to help support that. But I just share this example with you again because you will likely have different parts of the pyramid that you need to implement or exercise at any given time. The scale and what that looks like for your business can be very different depending on how you operate, how many employees you have, what your footprint looks like for your business, and ultimately what your needs are. But again, this is why it's important to remember HR is a function, not a person. All right. And this gets into talking about how HR evolves as your business evolves. So, a lot of us, we start off, and hopefully, well, I won't say hopefully, I hope everyone has the greatest success in their business that they seek. But most of us, we're going to start in that build phase and we're going to eventually go into the run phase. Some of us, we jump through phases very quick, right? But this is just a very simple model. There are other models. You can slice this down into more phases, of course, but I try to keep it at least somewhat simple for you for context. But this is really just illustrating to you that, again, your HR function will evolve over time. It's also important to remember is who you bring into your HR function will likely evolve over time. Just I use myself as an example, just so you have a comparator. I'm a builder. So wherever I go, whether it's a $5 billion company or a $500,000 a year company or a $50,000 a year company, I am building, and I'm building different pieces as it relates to HR or helping the business owner or the leaders solve different problems. And that's my heart. I love to build. And so that's really getting into a lot of the foundational HR, the compliance, making sure we automate things so that we can scale, getting all that stuff. I call it, like getting it turnkey, because a lot of this stuff can be automated and you can save yourself a lot of time and effort. Now, once you get some of those foundational elements in and your business is more operational, that's where HR, we start looking at more things like the HRIS, which is the Human Resources Information System. That's when we start thinking and planning more for training. We start looking at ways HR again can be efficient and we can automate more and more. Because to be honest, again, like I shared with you, a lot, probably, I'm honestly being very honest with you, about 95%, if not more, of what we used to do in paper is completely gone, meaning it's all automated now. So again, that is an opportunity to really make sure you streamline those. And then when you grow and you get into that rhythm where you're consistently growing, you've gotten that foundation established, that's where we start to look at things that impact your business, like, oh, okay, well, I have more employees. Do I have leave of absence and leave needs for my employees? Do I need to put a bonus plan in place? Might I look at executive compensation, because now I have a couple of founders that are now in executive roles that are helping to grow the business, right? So all of these things and parts of HR, they come in when they're needed. So, it's not like every day I come in and hit the same 5 buttons and it all spins around. It's literally every day is vastly different depending on what are the needs of your business. But this is just, again, helping you to see that we always crawl before we run. And so, most of us, again, we're going to be in that build phase or even some in the run, but just be realistic in terms of where your HR function is. And then, again, helps you to understand and know what sort of things to plan for as you mature and have more of a need for that particular function. Okay. A couple things that I share with folks if you're thinking about hiring human resources, especially as a business owner. A couple things, again, I just share with you to think about. Again, HR is a function, not a person. Your needs will fluctuate over time. I gave myself the example of the building here from before. it's hard to change for a tiger to change its stripes. There's that old saying. And so when you're hiring HR people, you want to find HR people that are really good at the phase of business that you're in. Now, again, I have myself personally, I've been through all the phases of the business. I would say I'm good at all of them, but I love building. That's one of the things that really drives me and I'm passionate about. But again, as you're starting to evaluate that, think about how your needs will evolve. When you're talking with people that are, I'll call them sales reps, there's people that sell different types of services, like there's the ADPs and the paychecks and things like that. They all have their HR services that they sell in addition to their payroll. So a lot of payroll companies will have HR. Just understand that that sales reps are there to sell. They're not necessarily there to tell you what your department needs. Now, again, they're going to do an assessment. They're going to give you some information. That's common. First of all, I love sales. It's not any dig against sales, but just make sure you know really what your HR function needs, because a lot of times the sales reps, their view of your HR function is going to be different than someone who actually practices HR and really has had a chance to really understand your business and know what's appropriate and how to scale for your particular organization. Because again, every organization is very different. It's like a house. I tell people that every time you go to a different house, you have different rules and different norms. It's just like that in a business. And being a business owner, you get to make all those rules, right? So you still, get to be the king and queen of the castle. All right. So, one of the resources that I recommend for everyone to bookmark, and I actually use this quite a bit myself. So, I support companies all throughout the US, and every state has its own set of employment laws or requirements for hiring an employee. So, Ohio is actually has a very good site. It's called ohio.gov is hiring your first or next employee, and it pretty much walks you through what you would need. And this is getting on that bottom of the pyramid that we talked about earlier, which are the compliance type of elements, which again are must haves for all businesses, regardless of your size, your duration, etc. So definitely bookmark this because it will help you to see whatever other resources you might need, and or if you have, there's like again e-forms, or if there's a database or something that you need to report information or taxes that you need to pay. It's a very good site. Excuse me. If you are outside of Ohio, you can Google the state's Department of Labor, the DOL, and a lot of times you'll be able to navigate and find similar information starting with each state's Department of Labor. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, you could be sitting in Ohio, but if you hire an employee that lives in Pennsylvania, the laws that you have to comply with follow the employee, not the business. So that's why a lot of times before COVID hit, a lot of times people would not hire people out of state. And that's why, because you actually have to be, there's a whole compliance piece to doing business in another state, and it all ties back to your employees. We could do another deep dive on that one day, but just trust me that if you're going to hire an employee, the laws will follow them. So if you are, again, making those decisions, that adds some complexity to what you might need to comply with or pay. So just know what you're getting into. And again, remember, the laws follow the employee, not the employer. All right, so a couple of things to get you started. And again, these are, I'm going to go through these quickly. So I don't intend you to remember each and every one, but I'll just point out some of the things that you'll need to get started for human resources. Again, regardless of your size and that of your business, or even, if you're doing business, you're hiring contractors, if you're hiring employees, this is a really good time to start thinking about those things. So again, our organizational development, that's where we really get into like our job structure, our teams, our job descriptions, salary, making sure that we have people classified properly as exempt or non-exempt, because there actually are rules around that. It's not what you feel like making them exempt or non-exempt that day, or if somebody likes to punch a clock or not. Those are not reasons to make somebody exempt or non-exempt. So those, again, these are very foundational, but there's a couple of sites there that you can use to get some information, like Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's different things that they have available that you can use to benchmark your HR systems. I always recommend the Department of Labor and the Department of Labor, which is Wage and Hour, which is a division of the Department of Labor. So anything related to timekeeping, payroll processing, they're also where overtime rules are set, as well as what I just talked about, employee classifications. There's a definition and there's a test for that. But what I tell folks is make sure that your foundation is solid, meaning that you're doing things properly, you're doing things correctly, you're reporting properly. That's most of your headaches come out of these types of things that fall through the cracks. So, we tell people like, hey, I'm not going to pay you overtime this week. I'll comp it for you for future time. It's like, okay, well, if that person's non-exempt, you actually have just violated the law. So, there's these things you got to make sure you know what decisions you can make based on the ways people are classified, and make sure you're making those decisions in a legal and ethical way. Recruiting, couple of things I recommend there. If you're a government contractor, definitely read up on affirmative action plans. The ruling that you might have seen in the news that was recent from the Supreme Court is talking about academia, but as of now, we're still working through affirmative action plans on the on the government contracting side. And basically, what that means is, as a government contractor, they'll oftentimes require you to have diverse recruiting efforts. So you have to launch what we call a diversity recruiting campaign so that they make sure that you're in compliance. And there's other elements that are mentioned in here that go along with that. The other is the Equal Pay Act. There's a lot going on with that, with pay transparency, as well as different questions you can and cannot ask people in your interview process. So this really, again, comes down to very much so a state by state for equal pay. And you've got to know the state laws and where that person lives, obviously, to make sure that you're compliant. Employment offers, couple things there for you just to keep top of mind are looking at the state drug test laws with the medical marijuana. Some states do allow employers still to have rules that you cannot have that in your system. Other states do not, so you have to know what each state says specifically. You may also have employment verifications or other things that might come up. Let's see, E-Verify. This is another one I definitely recommend you bookmark, because anytime you hire someone, you need to go into E-Verify, and that's through the Department of Homeland Security. They make sure that people that are working in the US are authorized. That can be a big fine if you don't have your E-Verify compliance. Payroll taxes, I gave a little bit of insight into that, but you definitely want to look at your state and your federal, depending on if you're nonprofit or for profit. There's different tax structures. Your accountant will tell you what taxes you're eligible for, but a lot of times HR can close that gap so you understand, if it's payroll, if it's employer funded, kind of how that all works on the business side. HIPAA, that gets into things like our privacy of medical information when people go on leave. If you send out a note to the teams like, hey team, Dina's on leave, she's having back surgery, like boom, you just HIPAA violation because you gave medical information, right? So you have to really think and put I call it your business owner hat on, because in these types of situations you want to always make sure you're doing things appropriately. And then things like records retention, like you have to keep certain files for a certain amount of time. Onboarding, again, just keep, there's no compliance specifically related to that, but definitely keep, I have a, make sure you have a really good plan. Onboarding should really be anywhere from 6 months to a year with varying degrees of activity. Again, of course, you're going to have more at the start of an employee's journey with you than at the 1 year mark out, but you want to make sure that you've got a good investment on that. And then for performance management, again, there's no specific compliance, but performance reviews and role clarity and jobs descriptions and all these things can be really important for you. Just very quick, the benefits and risk management, those are the different insurances. Of course, we know benefits, and again, those can evolve after as you grow. And then leave of absence is one. Leave of absence, it again follows the state. So there are state laws. There's only one federal for FMLA right now. But each state also, you have to scan to make sure they do or don't have their own leave laws. And that can be regardless of how many employees you have. So you have to always make sure, again, you check the laws in the state where the employee resides. All right. We talked about that there. Okay. So I know that was a lot. It's not, meant to that you have to make all of your decisions in terms of what you're doing with your HR function today. But what I really wanted to, and I'll go back here, I usually end on a different, just for questions, I'll go back to the run grow slide is usually one people like here. But we'll open up for some questions. And really, again, the main thing here is every part of your business we think about, I need to have the right expertise, I need to grow, I need to fund it, I need to make sure that it scales properly. But when it comes to HR, it's like, oh wait, I forgot, I need to hire people. So my charge with this is, again, not to overwhelm you, but just to say that HR should be top of mind. And when it is, it can be a great enabler. If it's not involved in at the right points in time, it can create risk for you, which risk can be, of course, lawsuits and fines and things like that, which I don't like to lead with the scary side of HR. But the other side is it can actually bottleneck you if you're not planning for it appropriately. And before I open the questions, I'll just give you one quick example. I had a client, and this client's business was doing phenomenally. I mean, they were very easily into the seven figures in their first 18 months. I mean, unbelievable success, and super, super proud of her. But guess what? She couldn't get beyond that growth point that she had established, and she had to turn business down because she did not have the right people. So, it's one of those examples I give, and she did the right thing. I mean, she had to put things on hold for a little bit in order to regroup and get the right people in, get them trained and so forth. So it's probably about another 6 months or so just to get back on track. So it's a good example of, in that case, HR was holding her back because she didn't have any HR. She just grew her business very quickly. And then we had to actually stop taking on new business because she didn't have, the right people and infrastructure to handle it all. So we had to build that for her, or get the right people in over time. So hopefully that gives you some incentive to be proactive. Alrighty. So do we have some questions? Want to open it up? Okay, let me go over to the chat here. Oh, okay, great. How do HR functions differ for nonprofits? Great question. Honestly and truthfully, they don't differ that much. There's, again, some different things on the payroll side and some different tax. It will say, taxes that we pay or don't pay because we're nonprofit. But really, when it comes down to it, it's not any different for profit and nonprofit. I'm going to go back here just very quick to just show you. And this is Paula. Hi, Paula. If you look at this employee life cycle here, that is going to apply regardless of nonprofit or for-profit status. So that's, I think, a good way to think about it. All right, so Paula has another question. What are some strategies for hiring employees for short-term grant terms, less than a year? Yeah, that's a great one because again, I'm looking at again nonprofit here, assuming that that's the case. Hiring employees, when you talk about strategies for that, you really want to think. I always say think like marketing, okay? Because marketing is the part of your organization that tries to understand what your companies want and what they'll be most responsive to. If you use that same sort of mindset when you're hiring people, you actually are then translating the best parts of your business or that opportunity, and you're going to be able to communicate that out to them. So, I always think of it that way. So, some of the best strategies I say are, what do people that work in the types of fields that you are looking for, what do they want? Okay. And where do I find them? How much do I need to pay them? So you kind of work backwards and then hopefully, like I said, lay out those strategies that you think will be most attractive for them. Let's see, managing volunteers. Managing volunteers, hints for managing volunteers. That was another question. That is very interesting too, because volunteers, you have, again, people are giving their time, they're giving their energy, they're giving their passion and their expertise to helping out that organization. The best advice I have is make sure you have thoroughly trained, responsible people to manage volunteers, and make sure you have good plans and ideas of training them. And I'll just share with you, this is my personal and professional opinion, because a lot of times we get people in, they have all the passion and the enthusiasm. They may not have the skills or the organization or the direction in order to get done what we need to. So I think the better that we are organized and the better that we have people that are organized on our end that can train and or set up things for the volunteers to be pretty turnkey, I think that's the best thing, so that it really just eliminates a lot of confusion and potential tension that you might get. The better we are organized, they can come into our system and work effectively. Let's see. Harry. So it says, is the NFL, NBA sports industry generally exempt from HIPAA compliance? Well, so here's the thing. There's HIPAA is one of these interesting things. It has to do with protected health information. So technically, again, just looking at the HIPAA compliance, I don't want to do a deep dive into the NBA and NFL because I know like their injuries are part of reporting, which I'm sure they have some sort of language that goes in their contracts that specifies this. I'm almost positive because again they're giving you a generalized diagnosis. Now if they were giving again a certain level, like if they actually showed you the test results or got into different levels of that, I think that they would have to have some sort of really good ironclad clearances to make sure that they're compliant. But for most of us, it really is just innocent. We are organizational agents, again, whether you're an owner or a worker, and it's important that for your business that it's a very strict needs to know and that you're not disclosing anything. Because here's the thing, that person can tell people anything they want, but you as the employer, if you share that information, it could be considered a risk. Okay, and I don't know if that, again, I think there's some different elements to that I'm not as particularly versed in, so I hope that at least gives you a little bit of direction, but I'm sure that they have some language in their contracts or, even with the league that has something to do with that. I'm certain that they have that. I just don't know it offhand. And Deborah Brown. We've got, how many employees should you hire on average if you're for profit and you're in the funding and building stage? Then you should always hire to your business need. So you want to make sure that when you're hiring someone, think about this, that you're asking them to make a commitment of their time, energy, and expertise. And, people will typically make decisions on where they think that is most predictable. So I say that because you say if you're still in the funding and building stage, you may not have the money yet to actually hire people on. You want to make sure that you have the funds to hire. And then when you talk about funds to hire, you'll see on the finance side, it's not just salary. So for your salary, you actually have to multiply a factor on top of that because you have taxes and you have, if you're offering any benefits at that point, you have to add those costs. Those costs are what we call fully burdened. So you want to make sure that you have enough business to support the fully burdened cost of what it is to hire someone before you actually bring them on. And to be very honest with you, people, for us as a business owner, we are looking at it as I need employees or I need help or I need expertise to do a set of tasks. But for people that are the workers and the employees, it's a very big decision to dedicate your time and energy with an employer. And they ask questions all the time because I do a lot of recruiting. They ask questions about the company, the manager. Is the company viable? It's a new company. They'll ask a lot of questions like, are they funded, right? Like, so they'll ask some of these questions depending on the role. So again, you always want to make sure that you're actually ready financially, work related, all of those things need to line up before you hire. Now, I say that I'm talking about hiring them on as an employee. Now, you can always contract with people until you get to that point. Me myself, I've been in business for a little over 3 years now, full time. And I contract, I don't have anyone else on the books except for me right now, but I do bring a fair amount of contractors in and out of projects that I have through the week, or I'm sorry, through the year. So I still have relied pretty heavily and successfully on contractor partners in order to fill those gaps. So there are different ways to hire. Okay. Well, let's see. There was one chat. Okay, Deborah's got another question. How many HR people should you hire on average in the funding and building stage? Honestly, truthfully, I'll just say at least one. And a lot of times that you want to make sure you have someone with that expertise that knows how to build and how to scale a function. And usually that person can help guide you along. They can get a sense of where your direction is headed, how quickly you're getting there, what kind of resources you need. And then that person will tell you when you need to start bringing in specialists. A lot of times, if it's just you have very low volume of certain tasks, that person still may be able to maintain it for you. But then they'll also be able to tell you at what point you would need to think about bringing in other expertise or scaling. Like I have a client and they want to do some additional leadership training. I do leadership training, but to be honest with you, I even recommended that we bring in a third party for this just because I have certain relationships with the managers that I want them to see and hear another perspective beside mine, right? So, it's not that I can't do it, but in this case, I recommended we bring a third party so that they can hear things from different people besides me, right? So there's different reasons that we bring expertise in at different times. All right. All right. Well, that wraps up our questions, and I appreciate you guys asking the questions because this is not it's not an easy type of thing to always decide. Like you said, I'm making these decisions for my business. How many employees do I need to hire? And when do I need to get HR involved? And all of these things, I go back to our first slide here, all the things that keep you up at night. But, one of the things, if you remember from your SCORE mentors, I know we're always very consistent in telling people is just make sure that as you get a sense of where you're going in your business, that you do enlist the right people at the right time. So it's not so much about knowing and memorizing all of this, in my opinion. It's really more about knowing what are some of the indicators in your business that give you the foresight to say, hey, look, I need to make sure I get somebody in who's dedicated and can make sure that I'm setting my foundation appropriately. And generally, you'll have a sense of that when you start picking up business. To Deborah's question below, when you start hiring employees and you start picking up contract and things start moving in a more predictable fashion. So that's typically when you need to bring us on. But it never hurts to always have your HR consultant in your, I call it your back pocket, like your accountant and everyone else. You may not need us all of the time. But if you keep us engaged and you have a good partner, they can help grow with you. And it's a lot of fun for me as a practitioner because I get to see these businesses grow and even see what they've done with some of the work we've done with them. They've taken it to another level as they've needed to for the business. So, we all go through the same types of decisions and challenges, but you always want to just make sure you have a good team behind you that can help, or at least know where to go. All right. Well, I think that's all of the questions that we have. I certainly wish you all the best of luck by far, as it relates to your business and how you're growing. I wish you the most success. Make all the money in the world, because I know we're all doing a lot of great things with our nonprofits and some of the other businesses we have at SCORE. There's a lot of really great community work going on there as well. So I applaud you for taking that plunge and appreciate your time as always. And if you any other questions or anything you have, feel free to shoot them to SCORE, and they'll usually get them back to us, and we'll get back to you as well. Thank you all.
This is Dan Uhrman, SCORE Mentor. Thank you, Dina, for a great presentation. As I mentioned earlier, since you registered and attended, you will receive a link to the slides, which will allow you to view this at your leisure and also to share them with your business colleagues. Again, thank you very much, Dina.